All right, this is Rudy. It's January the 28th, 2015. I found a file that says complete Kent Hovind sentencing transcript, January 19th, 2007. Whether it is a complete transcript or not, I do not know. And I'm going to read Kent's statement before sentencing. And then I'm also going to make another audio where I read the judge's statement during sentencing. It may be kind of long. And of course, Kent is a professional orator. So I'm going to read it fast because I just want it to get out there. It's not going to I'm not going to pause. I'm just going to try to get the words out there, and you'll have to use your imagination of how Kent would have really said it. I'm going to start on page 71. The defendant. Thank you, Your Honor, for letting me share my side of the story that none of you have seen. I would just like to cover three things, if you'd give me the time. I would like to give you a brief history of our church ministry, a brief history of my state of mind on the three charges that I was charged with, and just a few simple questions I just cannot resolve. I can say everything in 20 minutes, but your court reporter would have a stroke, so I need to slow down. Please allow me the time to finish. In Aesop's fables, there was once a lion who trapped a mouse, and the mouse said, "Would you please let me go?" And the lion said, "What can you ever do for me?" And the mouse said, "I don't know, maybe someday I can do something for you." And one day the lion was caught in a net, and the mouse chewed him out of there. I feel like the mouse. I stand here in great fear of the power of this court. I know full well you have the power to free me, send me home today, and you have the power to send me to prison for many years. Your decision can destroy my life, destroy my ministry, and destroy my grandchildren. I've prayed for God to guide your decision. I know that huge amounts of money and time have been spent on both sides, have been spent on this issue. I have even a greater fear of standing before God someday. We have never had the opportunity to speak, Your Honor, other than hearing what's said in court. I've never had the opportunity one time to speak to Michelle Heldemeyer in a friendly manner. I have never one time had the opportunity to speak to Scott Schneider other than adversarial. I wish so badly we could have just talked to them. I have been over everything that I can find on this case 30 times in my freezing jail cell the last 3 months. I'm convinced more than ever every single thing could have been settled with a discussion. I know I tend to be haughty and proud, and I apologize. I don't think that's against the law. I think that's just my personality. I think Agent Snyder and Ms. Heldemeyer, possibly you, Your Honor, face a false opinion about who I am. I know I cannot change the jury instructions, and that is not my desire today, but I want you to see my heart. Proverbs 18 says it's folly and a shame to answer a matter before you hear it. You need to hear both sides. You've heard what the IRS says about me and my wife. You've heard that we are evil tax protesters and lawbreakers, and we have to pay for our crimes by spending years in prison and paying the government back millions of dollars and say we stole from them. Matthew 5 says I'm supposed to agree with my adversaries while I'm in the way before I go to court, before I go to prison. I never had the chance. The first notice I had that they were concerned at all about how we were conducting our ministry was the day I was arrested and handed a sealed indictment. I never had a clue. For 10 years, they've been investigating personal taxes on me. Could not get a grand jury to indict, and all of a sudden I get arrested for something I knew nothing was coming, or I would have talked to them. I would have obeyed the Matthew 5 passage and gone and tried to resolve it with them. And I know some far-out radicals have written this court, claiming that all kinds of crazy things, and because of that, you probably think I'm a flight risk. Your Honor, I'm not a flight risk. Do know people all over the country that love me and love my ministry, but they are the same people that love the law and love the Word of God, and they would be the first ones to turn me in. I have no intention to flee. If sentencing is postponed, if I could just go home, I promise you I fear God more than anybody else on this planet. Before God, I will do whatever this court says. I will show up when you tell me to show up, where you tell me to show up. I wish everybody would just please put away their swords for just a minute. The 3 months I have been in jail have been very good for me in many ways. I have been able to lead 15 men to Christ and seen some incredible lives changed. I've grown much closer to the Lord. I've been away from my hectic travel schedule. My daughter has done my scheduling for years, and she knows it's pretty bad. It's been a good rest time for me. I've experienced the whole range of emotions that being locked in a cage gives a person. I see now why God's law, which is perfect, the Bible authorizes restitution, beatings, and capital punishment, but never jails. I can tell you from being on the inside, it doesn't work. Every man in there, when I talk to them, would you rather just have a beating than be away from your family? Oh yes, please give me the worst beating I can take. The jail and prison, in my opinion, is cruel and unusual punishment. It doesn't work. I'm not a lawyer and the whole legal system baffles me, but everything I know and hear about this tells me that this whole thing could have been resolved if we could talk. I have never been offered that opportunity. I'm supposed to be a peacemaker according to the Bible, and I failed miserably to make peace with Scott Snyder. I'm sorry. I would love to. I see at least one major mistake I made in going over all the papers I filed over the years. My attitude and frustration with what I felt sincerely was the lack of process showed through in my letters, and I apologize for that. My letters show my frustration and my pride, and I sincerely apologize for that. I am not a tax protester and never have been. I have said hundreds of times that the tax laws are perfectly fine. I don't object to any of the laws, yet some people are enforcing things that aren't even in the laws I object to. I know there are tax rebels out there, and the government has ordered people to send a message to stop the tax rebellion. I'm not part of a tax rebellion, never have been. I'm an evangelist. I want everybody to obey the law, so it is not my intent to break any laws at all, never has been. I need to apologize to Scott Snyder if I can. My last words ever said to him around the street in front of my house, he was taking pictures of for this trial. I rolled down the window of my van and said, "Scott, we'd like you not to come on the property, please. We've had 80,000 visitors over the years come to our ministry, and Scott Snyder is the only one that I've ever turned away, and I'm sorry." You're welcome anytime, Scott. I would love for this to be over and bring your family. He's a better man than me. And to you, Judge Rogers, I want to thank you for your patience and your professionalism manner in this courtroom. I know you have a very heavy burden and a heavy caseload, and I pray for you daily that God will bless you. My only complaint is that you won't allow water in here. As a public speaker, that probably bothers me, but that's your decision. I regret that this case was ever brought here. These issues could have been resolved instead of jail time if you could please order mediation. I know we could work everything out. I struggled as our ministry developed in 1989 until the present for the proper way to structure a church ministry that would be true to Scripture and obey the law. We have gone through 3 different stages of an incorporated business trust and then Faith Baptist Fellowship, and it is dissolved without remedies at law. I'm relying on people to tell me how is the proper way to do this. My goal is to do it right, to make everybody happy, but I've never, to my knowledge, willfully disobeyed any known obligation, law, or statute that applies to me or the Lord's church. And I want to thank you also, Your Honor, for withholding formal adjudication until allocation is finished. If I could publish now very quickly a brief history of our ministry, 3 times in 2005, I sent letters to the foreman of the grand jury and copied them to Michelle Heldemeyer. I realize now this was a major mistake. I should have actually sent the letter to Michelle Heldemeyer. So because of this, she doesn't have to answer. It wasn't actually sent to her. This was a technical mistake of which I've made many over the years. But I've asked her this to the grand jury regarding the investigation of Creation Science Faith Baptist Fellowship, which was at the time dissolved, Dinosaur Adventureland, and Kent Hovind. My 3rd letter, I got no response. At the bottom, my attorney tells me that the U.S. attorney told him the grand jury investigation of me has been indefinitely postponed, but Scott Snyder is still investigating the possibility of tax evasion or other tax crimes to the above names, which would be above. Every lawyer I have consulted informs me ministers and churches are not liable for income taxes, as shown later in this affidavit. We did not ever consult David Gibbs. He and his family came over to our ministries and to our Dinosaur Adventureland after he preached at our church. We discussed many topics, and I have never one time advocated to him or anybody else in my life that anybody should break the law regarding taxes. Never have I done that. Paragraph 2. During my numerous written inquiries, the IRS refuses to identify at the time the law or taxes. This caused me great frustration. I did not know what I was doing wrong. 7202 is not an identifiable law. It frustrates me dearly that I want badly to be right with God, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to get it right. I don't know what I've done. So has my state of mind changed? I still want to serve God. I still want to obey the law, but I haven't seen it. Paragraph 3. Agent Snyder has refused to answer my simple questions for 4 years now because he knows he's acting outside the law. The law says his clear delegated authorities is under Title 27, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, which includes Count 58. I'm not involved in any of those. Enclosed letter to Scott Snyder from December 27th. It's only 10 pages long, but it's a lot of supporting documentation. As usual, he never responds. It is my prayer that both you and the U.S. Attorney will read it and help me understand if I'm wrong. Over and over and over the years, I've asked for help from Agent Snyder. Please tell me what I'm doing wrong. 3 times I sent a copy of this letter to the U.S. Attorney. The court, Mr. Hoven, she's going to have a stroke. You're going to have to slow down, please. Thank you. The defendant. Bottom paragraph. After sending hundreds of pages of documents to the IRS, numerous letters asking honest questions, which received no response except a surprise Gestapo-type raid, the only conclusion I can come to is someone is trying to stop the creation ministry. And again, I'm surmising. On May the 3rd, my attorney sent a letter to the Assistant U.S. Attorney, Michelle Heldemeyer, requesting that I come testify before the grand jury. She refused, being a preacher of the gospel and not wishing to break any laws or embarrass my Lord. I thought it best that you see and hear the truth from all sides before deciding if our church ministry should be drawn into an expensive lawsuit. And here we are today, having spent a fortune. And then the whole bottom of this page, there is a little bit of history of our ministry. When I was born and raised, I was ordained at Emmanuel Baptist Church in 1974 to the gospel ministry. Page 4 at the bottom, mostly just summary again. In 1989, I took a vow of poverty to commit my resources to spreading the word of God. I don't want to own anything. I am not the owner of CSE. I don't own anything, nor do I want to. And this is not a way to get out of taxes. This is a sincere desire in my heart to dedicate everything that I have to God, who began our ministry in 1989, Creation Science Evangelism. Bottom line, we've always encouraged others to copy our materials and give them away. We have never charged anything for our ministry, never. We don't charge for my seminars. In the affidavit, it said I do debates for free. That is not true. We only take love offerings. Page 5. Between 89 and 96, the ministry grew very rapidly. I was invited to preach all over, so we were able to purchase the parsonage that my wife and I still live in. There used to be 10 offices in the house. There are now only 7. What woman in this room would want to have 7 offices in the house where she lives? My wife is amazing. She has put up with this all these years. The property used to be CSE, consists of a parsonage, office buildings, and office equipment, etc. Nothing belonging to CSE can now or ever become my property. It is an irrevocable and sacred trust of an ongoing ministry, which is why Agent Snyder seized the $42,000 in church funds. I'm responsible for that. God entrusted this to me. The legal resources I had was to file suit, so I filed suit. That was what I'm supposed to do, and now they are mad for filing what the law says I can do. I do not understand what I did wrong. Next page, beginning 99, we merged the Faith Baptist Fellowship. These are the years in the indictment. Why am I here? It should be Pastor Mooneyhan. 2002, Pastor Mooneyhan resigned and dissolved the fellowship. So remedies at law took over the management of the ministry. It's still that way today. If the IRS or the government wants to seize the property, they need to deal with remedies at law, not me. I don't know how they can seize ministry property for a debt Kent Hovind owes. I don't understand that. Remedies at law as a great courtesy response. Michelle Heldemeyer referred to them as being under injunction or something like that. There is simply a great misunderstanding on that, but I have it with me, but I won't take time today to read all that. 1996, our cars were seized, as we heard in the trial. A friend of mine paid the money to get back the cars. To be sure, I was not doing anything wrong. That year, I wrote to 3 tax professionals, just like it says in booklet 517, I believe. It says if you're concerned about your tax, you should write it to an attorney, enrolled agent, and a tax consultant. So I wrote to John Schloback, an enrolled agent. I stayed at his house. I sat down. I'm a minister. Is this taxable? He wrote back a letter saying, no, you're not breaking any laws, you're fine. I wrote to Guy Curtis, an attorney, Glenn. John told me many attorneys believe this, but are afraid to write a letter because then they'll be hassled by the IRS. They will be bullied. But Guy Curtis, who I have said now is in trouble, of course they are going to target anybody who ever stands up against him. But in 96 he wrote me a long letter saying, no, Ken, I agreed with you. I agreed with what you're doing, and you're not breaking any laws. I wrote to Fred Ortiz, a tax consultant in Hawaii, because he was the only one brave enough to do it. He wrote a long letter back saying, no, Kent, you're doing fine. I'm relying on the advice of these professionals. I contacted the IRS to get a copy of my IMF file, had it decoded. On my code, they had me coded as an underground coal miner in Virginia, in the Virgin Islands. That is a taxable activity. And I've never been to the Virgin Islands, and I'm not sure I don't mind, and I sure don't mind coal there. And we finally got that fixed in the IMF, and we paid to get the IMF file sent to us. It was 700 pages. The government was complaining about all the time it took for them to do that. That's their job, and we did pay to have that done. Every letter said, please send me the cost. We paid hundreds of dollars to have those pages copied. When those pages were handed to Agent Snyder on the stand, my attorney pointed out there were 10 pages missing. Without even looking at the stack, he said, yes, I know these pages are not in here. Those 10 pages, Your Honor, say very clearly I am not a tax protester and I owe no tax. That's what was in those 10 pages. That's why they were excluded. I kept receiving letters from the IRS. I always answered their letters every time. I have never avoided their questions. I kept asking them questions. Which letter should I fill out, or which form should I fill out? Which tax am I allowable for? I sent them the professional letters from the professionals saying, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? I'm not involved in a taxable activity. The ministry, as I'm going to show you in a minute, is not. I'm getting dizzy, folks. I'm reading so fast. Sorry, I got to take a break. Okay, I'm going to hit pause. Hold on. Whew.